Shri Sanjay Malhotra ji, and the President of FATF, Ms. Aliza. It's really a wonderful opportunity for India to host the Private Sector Collaboration Forum in Mumbai. It is also a landmark event for us to listen to the private sector across the globe, and also an opportunity for Indian private sector to participate and share their views, and also the progress of technology that has happened in this entire period of growth in India. Last decade has been a very important decade for India, where we have actually transformed into a digital economy. As you all know, India's digital payment ecosystem is one of the largest in the world now, and a lot of innovation is happening in this area from Indian private sector. It will be wonderful also to share some of those practices. You know, there is a UPI stall just outside where the registration counter is there. So we welcome all of you to share the experience of UPI as well as you participate in this event. Now I'd like to invite the President of FATF to make her opening remarks for this inaugural event.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today for my first public and private sector collaborative forum. This is a very exciting moment as President of the FATF, because while I have very often engagement with many stakeholders, this is not just one more of them. The private sector for the FATF, it's a key partner in many ways, and I will be speaking on that matter through my opening remarks. But I also want to tell you that today it's not only me representing the institution, so I want to take a moment to recognize some people that are in the room and ask them to identify themselves, because I think that their presence here speaks to the importance that the FATF has to this forum. So first, we have Executive Secretary Violaine Clerc on this side of the room. We have co-chairs from 4 out of our 5 working groups. So we have Takahide and Elad from our policy work, which a lot of you know, and they headed the discussions yesterday on Reg 16. But we also have Smarak from India and Martin from the Netherlands, who lead the work on the risk and trends. So I can't spot you in the room now, but if you can put your hands up so that the private sector can identify you. Thank you. We have from our evaluations group, which is the one that goes through all the reports of our members. We have Stuart, who is actually a supervisor from Hong Kong, China, Stuart. And we also have a co-chair from our Global Network Cooperation Group, which is the one that oversees the work with the FSRBs, but also the observers. And this is Giles Thompson from the UK, trying to spot where Giles is on this side. And Giles will be the incoming Vice President as of July, so also an important figure for you to know. And we have heads of delegations from many of our jurisdictions. We have, importantly, 2 former presidents of the FATF, Mr. Raja Kumar from Singapore, who I see here on this side of the room. And I think we also have former President Dr. Player from Germany. If he's not here because he was coming in this morning, he might join us later today, and he's in one of the panels. I wanted to take a moment to recognize that part of our room, because it really speaks, as I said, on how we value this partnership with the private sector. Now, on the side of the private sector, we have over 200 representatives that come from all areas. We have banking representatives, we have from the fintechs, we have from the virtual asset service providers. Importantly, we have the NPOs with whom I had the opportunity to meet last night, and of course MBTS, MBS, and many others of the sectors that are crucial to our work. So we welcome you all. In terms of our host, I cannot continue without thanking Governor Malhotra for his hospitality and thank you for the invitation last night, which was a lovely evening. And I also want to thank Vivek Arwal, who is the head of delegation of India, for the work that him and his team have done in having us here and preparing everything, but importantly for the leadership that India has played increasingly in the FATF. We are a task force, and the work that the delegations do in our work matter, so it's an opportunity for me to recognize also the work that India has been putting into the FATF. So that's for the participation that we have on the room. And as I said, this is a very important event for me personally. And I come with a very open mind in terms of engaging with the private sector, but I also want to have an invitation for you. If you have ideas on how we can better engage with the private sector, if you have views on how we can better partner, myself and the leadership of the FATF is very open for that. And the value of these meetings is not only the formal meetings that we have here, but the coffee breaks where a lot of the networking and the informal conversations happen. So do feel free to approach us and to engage on those conversations. Now, I'll go through the agenda of today just to set the tone of the conversations we will be having. But I thought it was important for me to highlight some examples of the important work we're doing with the private sector during this presidency that started in July of last year and will run until the mid of next year. The first one is financial inclusion. And being in India, it's very topical to speak on this matter. We heard yesterday from CGAP that 1.4 billion people around the world still don't have access to financial services. And for me, being in a world, and for the FATF, with 1.4 billion people without access to the financial system, it's not just an unfair matter, but it's an unsafe matter. To the extent that we have a big unregulated market, to the extent that we have a big and large use of cash, the larger the ecosystem for the criminals and the terrorists to hide. So it is within the interest of the FATF, and it's actually within the mandate as of 2019 of the FATF to foster financial inclusion. This is deeply connected to the work that we do in the FATF, and as you know, the FATF updated its standard on recommendation 1 just in February of this year, and there's an open consultation on this matter. We will be discussing that in one of the panels. And this consultation ends on April 4th. So it's an opportunity for me to signal this to the private sector and to say that we really look forward to hearing from you through these couple of days, but also in writing in this consultation. That's on the policy side, and of course we have recommendation 16 and others. So the policy side is deeply informed by the private sector, and we understand that it's not only because you're at the front of the fight that we do together, but also because you're the implementers of our standards. So it's crucial for us to keep this communication as we develop our policy, and we really thank you for your work on that front. The other area is the risk and trends. This is what we call internally the RTMG, the Risk and Trends Method Group. And you will see that the work of the RTMG in the FATF is increasing in terms of number of projects and importance of the projects. And I want to highlight that during this year, most likely after the June plenary, we will be having 2 global reports on an update of risk. One on terrorist financing, so this will be the first global terrorist financing update, and it will be, of course, very important for the private sector to mitigate those risks, but also an update on the risk of evasion of proliferation sanctions. So these 2 products, it's an opportunity for me to share with you. On the second one, there's also a public consultation open, and that one will run until April the 18th. In terms of the products that we have, and it's an opportunity also for me to showcase some of the work that we're doing, during the month of March, on March the 13th, we issued a very important report on the indicators that we find related to online child sexual exploitation. In particular, what it's called the sextortion, so the economic extortion to children for not sharing photographs or videos of display of sexual content. And the other one, and this is very concerning, the online live sexual exploitation of children. And this is a matter where all countries and all regions have work to do. In some cases, the countries have the victims, and in some cases, the countries have the perpetrators. And depending on which of these crimes you see, they actually cross. So, for example, on the sextortion, we have a lot of the victims in Europe, in North America, in the UK, in Australia. But if you look, and you have the criminals in other countries. But if you look at the online sexual exploitation, live sexual exploitation, this is where a predator is paying to see how they're lively exploiting a child sexually. The victims are usually in developing countries, and the perpetrators are in Europe, in the UK, in the US, and countries with resources. And these are people, children that do not have a voice, and it's been found that financial intelligence becomes crucial to identify these crimes and also to take the burden from the victims in terms of their testimony. So it's an opportunity from the FATF to say that this product was developed thinking of the private sector, of course the public sector as well, but it has very clear indicators for you to consume. And as we move along, we really look forward to hearing how this report is being useful and used by the private sector, but also ways in which we can improve our products for direct consumption. So I already touched on policy and I touched on the risk and trends. I want to move on to the assessments. The core work of the FATF, aside from setting the standards, is assessing the implementation of those standards. And the new round of assessment has already started. You're going to be seeing the first report from the Global Network coming from Moneyval later this year. The discussion will take place in June, and the report will be published soon after. And you will see the first reports from the FATF towards the end of this year, in which we will be looking at the reports in October at the plenary, and the reports will be published soon after. So we are starting a new round, and in starting this new round, we are counting heavily with the private sector, both in terms of being input for our assessments, and we have increased this through the last round, in terms of informing the risk and the context of the country, but also as consumers of our products. And I'm sure you know that the FATF has shortened these assessments in terms of how often they take place, so you will be looking also into more updated, more risk-based assessments. So an opportunity for me also to mention this. Now, I will be moving now to the content of the Private Sector Collaborative Forum, and I want to thank Mr. Raya Kumar for changing the name from consultative to collaborative, which is what this is all about. The first sessions took place yesterday. Some of you or most of you were present in those sessions. This was a full day related to payment transparency, and this marked, importantly, the second consultation on Recommendation 16. And I want to thank here the work of the team, again, of Takahire and Elad, but also of the Secretariat, in particular of Tom and Francesco, and all the teams supporting that work. Today, we will have 3 roundtables that will work on the evolving AML-CFT landscape, financial inclusion, and the humanitarian channels. This is for the flow of funds into areas that much need these resources. And we will close with a panel on supervision and the risk-based approach, very close to my heart and to the priorities of this presidency. And then we will hold a side event on women in AML. This will be the first time that the FATF has this kind of event with the private sector. So I very much look forward to this event. And I want to thank India, who offered and pushed for this event to take place. So thank you again to India on this front. On tomorrow, we will be tackling beneficial ownership, digitalization, data protection, and information sharing, as well as the latest terrorist financing risks and sanction evasion schemes. Here we will be hearing from Dr. Player. Germany hosted the No Money for Terror conference earlier this year in February, and that was a good opportunity for high-level conversations from the global network, mostly ministers from finance, in terms of the new risks that we're seeing in this important area of terrorist financing. So I want to close with the main message that I gave at the beginning, which is the value that we see in the private sector. we see the work of the FATF and the private sector on the same team in tackling the challenges that we have ahead. And without the private sector, the FATF's mandate to tackle money laundering and financing of terrorism and proliferation could really not be achieved. The private sector, as I said, is at the forefront of this fight against financial crimes, and in this fight, public authorities and private sector are on the same team. So I invite you to engage. I invite you to take on real conversations, to speak candidly about the challenges that we face, which we know are complex, and I'm sure we will get out of these conversations in a stronger mode. Now, I don't want to finish by saying I'll see you next year, because it's my commitment precisely after this forum to focus a lot of my work on continuing and strengthening the communication with the private sector. Some of you know because we've been picking your brains on how we can do that. And I know Executive Secretary Violet and Clerk is working very hard on this. So as I said at the beginning, an invitation for us to refresh and to foster and strengthen this relation. And we are very open-minded on the best way to do this so that we can have a regular and continued conversation. Thank you very much, and thank you to the Secretariat and all the team at the FATF Secretariat that provided the support for this event taking place. Thank you.
Thank you, Eliza, for your opening remarks. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of the former presidents of FATF, Mr. Raja Kumar and Mr. Marcus Clare, and also all the heads of delegations who are present from various delegations. I'll like to introduce the Governor of RBI, Mr. Sanjay Malhotra. Mr. Sanjay Malhotra began his career as an Indian Administrative Service Officer from the 1990 batch. He has always been a topper. He's an engineer by profession, topped his IIT cohort, then topped the exam for the Indian Administrative Service. He was rank 1. He was the youngest Indian Administrative Service officer of his batch. He served in various positions, including as a district magistrate in state of Rajasthan, served in Rajasthan and in Government of India in various important assignments. He has been an expert on the power sector. He worked in the power sector for a long time, both in the state as well as in the union government. He has served in the UNIDO for his work in the industrial sector, and then he was the secretary, permanent secretary to Government of India, heading Department of Revenue and Ministry of Finance, before he joined as Governor of RBI. And as secretary in Department of Revenue, he was also the chairman of the Interministerial Committee, which is the top apex body for coordination of AML-CFT effort of the country. He also led India's preparation for the mutual evaluation. He was a leader of the Indian team, and which saw us go through the mutual evaluation process very successfully and put India into the best possible category for FATF evaluation. He has joined recently as Governor of Reserve Bank of India with wealth of experience behind him, especially in the field of AML-CFT and in the field of financial inclusion, because he was also Secretary of Department of Financial Services that heads the banking and insurance and the security sector of the country. So with these words of introduction, I'd like to invite Mr. Sanjay Malhotra to make his inaugural address.
Thank you, Vivek, for the very, very kind words, many of them which I don't deserve. Thank you very much. Good morning, all of you, and very pleased to have on stage Ms. Eliza, the FATF President, the former Presidents, Mr. Raja Kumar, with whom we worked during our mutual evaluation, the other former Presidents, Mr. Marcus, representatives from the FATF member jurisdictions, representatives of banks, financial institutions, global associations, think tanks, civil society, my colleagues from the Reserve Bank of India, led by the DGs, representatives of the Ministry of Finance, my friend and my colleague Vivek Agrawal, Head of Delegation, Additional Secretary, ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed a pleasure for me to be here in this private sector collaborative forum 2025 of the FATF. I am happy to note that this is for the first time that it is not only the first time not only in India, but first time out of Europe that this is being held. And I would like to thank the President and the FATF for giving us this opportunity. With FATF, as also mentioned by Vivek, we worked very closely the last 2 years that I was there in the Department of Revenue. The FATF, which is the standard setting body for illicit financing, has come a very long way. Since its establishment in 1989, when there were only 16 members from now, and now, there are 40 members. And along with the FATF-style regional bodies, it covers more than 200 jurisdictions. The standards set by them for combating money laundering, proliferation financing, terrorism financing, they are implemented all over the world and playing a very, very important role in strengthening the global financial system, in making this world a safer place. India, of course, accords a lot of importance to anti-money laundering and countering of the financing of terrorism. Last year, India, as mentioned, underwent the mutual evaluation by the FATF, and we came up with the highest ranking, as mentioned by Vivek. This is recognition of our effective AML and CFT framework. It demonstrates our commitment towards money laundering and financing of terrorism. This has been a result of many years of continuous work in building and strengthening our systems against money laundering. And of course, it has been possible, because of the collaborative efforts of all those in the government, in the regulated sector, the regulators, and of course, very importantly, the private entities, the designated non-financial businesses and professions in the private as well as the public sector. The private sector plays a very vital role in keeping the financial system secure. They are the first line of defense in the security of the financial system. Their role in implementing due diligence procedures, conducting robust risk assessments, monitoring transactions, reporting suspicious activities is very critical for preventing the abuse of the financial system. They identify suspicious activities and help government agencies in destroying illicit financial networks. Strong public-private partnerships, they form the bedrock for safeguarding the integrity of the financial system. In India, we recognize the importance of close cooperation between the public and the private sector stakeholders in achieving these goals. The Reserve Bank, as the regulator and supervisor of a large segment of the financial system in India, has diligently and consistently worked towards building and ensuring implementation of a strong AML and CFT framework in this segment of the financial system in line with the FATF recommendations. The Reserve Bank has taken several initiatives to enhance cooperation and coordination with various stakeholders. Similarly, the FIU has set up FPAC, a public-private cooperation forum for facilitating closer interaction and collaboration. It has also supported the setting up of ARI-FAC, a cross-sectoral forum for the private sector reporting entities to collaborate among themselves. It is a result of these collaborative efforts that we have been able to build a very strong AML-CFT framework and at the same time demonstrate it during our mutual evaluation. My compliments, first of all, to all the stakeholders which were involved in this mutual evaluation process, especially the regulated entities in the financial sector, as well as the designated non-financial businesses and professions for this whole effort. Of course, while I take the credit for this, but the man behind all this work, all credit to him, Vivek Agarwal, who was our head of delegation. So many compliments to this whole team for the wonderful work that was done in this. However, we cannot, sit back and relax on our laurels. We are all aware that this is a very, very continuous, evolving and a dynamic situation. While technology has enabled and eased doing of business, at the same time it has also facilitated and fostered new and very sophisticated means of money laundering and illicit financing. So we need to be very cautious and alert all the time, especially the private sector people who are involved over here. And so we need to continue to closely cooperate amongst ourselves, the government agencies and the financial entities, civil society and others. The mutual evaluation process was very vigorous, very detailed, and it has already, given us a lot of insights. While it has given us areas, where we are strong, but at the same time there are areas where we need to improve. Those have been highlighted, so we'll keep those in mind. And we are determined to further strengthen our financial system to deter and combat illicit financial activities, taking into consideration the recommendations made during the evaluation. Coming to the agenda for this forum, I am told that yesterday's sessions were very engaging and produced lively discussions. Looking at the agenda for today and tomorrow, I am confident that the deliberations on the contemporary topics that we have lined up regarding the evolving AML and CFT framework, financial inclusion and humanitarian channels, risk-based approach to supervision, digitalization and information sharing, beneficial ownership, countering of proliferation financing. I'm sure the deliberations will be equally exciting and useful. Let me outline some of my thoughts for the forum in these areas. First, while we continue to make our financial systems safe and secure against money laundering and terrorist financing, we as policymakers need to be mindful that our measures are not overzealous and do not stifle legitimate activities and investments. You would all appreciate that multiple laws and regulations, each with their own level of granularity, cast a very high level of burden on the regulated financial sector providers. This is relevant in the context of AML CFT2. Therefore, we need to have laws and regulations which, with surgical precision, target only the illegitimate and the illicit, rather than use very broad and blunt tools which unintentionally hurt even the honest. Similarly, while making the policy, it's important to have very precise and balanced regulations. It's equally important that while we are implementing them, we keep the impact that they are going to have on the persons and the businesses in mind. Risk-based approach is recommended in this regard. We all, try to follow risk-based approach to be able to balance this. But let's keep in mind that this is only one step forward in this direction of reducing compliance burden while being able to pinpoint the suspicious and the dishonest. Let us appreciate that this is not the ultimate, this is not perfect, because it will always yield some false positives and false negatives. So we need, as implementers in the private sector and in the government sector, to continuously refine and improve our risk assessment models to improve them, to make them more robust. And while making these improvements, we need to improve, I think, two things. One, is quality of the data that we get, and the other is to be able to harness the evolving technologies that are coming in, whether it is artificial intelligence or blockchain technology or machine learning. This will help us in improving screening of transactions and detection of suspicious activities, thereby reducing errors, false positives, false negatives. Considering the evolving landscape in the area of money laundering, resulting from changing customer behavior and evolving products and services, we will need to continuously augment the AML risk assessment framework and make appropriate system enhancements on a regular basis after assessing the impact of the money laundering and other risks. The focus has also to be on understanding the latest trends and developments in the financial world that can be exploited by criminals, and accordingly develop tools and enabling frameworks that will allow us to detect suspicious transactions and activities early and take preemptive action. With the adoption of new technology, tools and models, I am sure that the AML CFT risk assessments can be further fine-tuned and refined. I would urge you all to kindly discuss and share best practices in identification, mitigation and supervision of AML CFT risks. This will not only help the businesses and the persons involved in reducing the compliance burden, it is also helpful for the private sector and the supervisors in the optimal allocation of their resources. Coming to financial inclusion, I think India has made substantial and remarkable progress. As per our information, about 94%, more than 94% of the adult population today has a bank account. Many of them have more than one, but there is still need to continue to widen and deepen it. The discussions on FATF standards to promote financial inclusion need to find answers to the challenge of aligning financial inclusion and financial integrity, especially for the developing economies. It must be ensured that regulations do not create unintended barriers to financial inclusion. We need to be mindful of customer rights and convenience while fulfilling the due diligence requirements. I am happy to note, and I mentioned it to the Presidency, that the amendments to Recommendation 1 and its interpretive note intend to foster and promote financial inclusion without compromising on financial integrity. Similar approach is perhaps needed to extend access of financial channels for supporting humanitarian aid. In recent years, digitalization has been increasingly applied to customer onboarding and customer due diligence processes. India has made huge strides in this regard too. The digital KYC and video KYC are shining examples of this. The central KYC records registry with more than 1 billion records is another example, which has the potential of ushering in a new era of customer onboarding by making it easier and seamless, not only for the customers but also for the regulated entities to perform customer identification and due diligence. This is an area which I've mentioned even earlier. There is a lot of scope for improvement, both, from the regulated entities, I think more, from the side of the regulated entities, but similarly, at the side of the regulators also to further improve the system. We had a discussion offline before this coming into this session, and I think we all together need to put our heads together as to how we can make the system more robust, more effective and efficient, so that all regulated entities, all regulators, all regulated entities can coordinate, and make it easier for everyone to do this KYC process so that there is no repetition of unnecessary KYC multiple times by different regulated entities for the same person. And I'm sure, you know, I'm told that there is a separate session on this, on the play of technical solutions in the area of customer due diligence, which will also help us in further refining and improving our due diligence process and the CKYCR framework. Further, during the process of CDD reporting, entities collect a large amount of data from the customers. There are requirements of sharing information with the Financial Intelligence Unit as well, with law enforcement agencies and data registries. There are concerns regarding data protection and sharing of information without consent. India has recently enacted a law for digital personal data protection. Exchange of experiences from different jurisdictions in this forum will help us in better implementing this new law in our country. Another important area which needs discussion is the travel rule. In today's world, fast payment systems are revolutionizing financial access and deepening financial inclusion. Developing countries like India have made huge progress in making digital payments accessible, affordable, and convenient. While card networks have helped the developing economies in improving fast payment systems like the UPI that we have in India have assisted emerging market and developing economies leapfrog in this area. We have also enabled cross-border payments using these fast payment systems with a few countries. We will continue to work towards fulfilling our commitment to the effective implementation of the next phase of the G20 roadmap towards inclusive cross-border payments by 2027. You are all aware that a lot of work needs to be done over there, and it's only a matter of time, I think, that cross-border payments will also become much more easier and cost-effective. And so in this context, the ongoing discussion in the FATF Recommendation 16 regarding the travel rule assume a lot of importance. To meet the G20 objective of making cross-border payments faster, cheaper, convenient, transparent, while at the same time maintaining their safety and security, it would be desirable to make the travel rule technology neutral. Lastly, discussions regarding combating proliferation financing and sanctions evasion need to answer questions related to identification of products and services which are most vulnerable to exploitation and the mitigation of the risks related to such products. To conclude, I would like to stress that through our collaborative efforts, we can certainly safeguard the trust that underpins the global financial framework. Together, let us continue to collaborate and innovate in building a financial ecosystem that is not only safe and secure, but also fast, convenient, accessible, and at the same time affordable. Let us build financial systems that will not only thwart the attempts of money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing, but also support financial inclusion, encourage innovation, and facilitate economic growth. In the end, I wish the forum a very fruitful and productive deliberations. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
I would like to thank the Governor, Shri Sanjay Malhotra ji, and the President, Ms. Eliza, for gracing the inaugural session. Now I'll request both the dignitaries to proceed, to go ahead with for the next session, and I'll request all the delegates to have a small break so that we can have setting for the first session of the PSCF. Thank you. Jai Hind.